Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. Today we get acquainted with a man who will be succeeded David Robertson as the St. Louis Symphony's music director. Stéphane Denève will assume that position with the orchestra's 2019-2020 season. He has performed with orchestras in this country and all over the world. He is currently music director of the Brussels Philharmonic and principal guest conductor of the Philadelphia Orchestra. But he's no stranger to St. Louis and, in fact, will be conducting here this week. We welcome Stéphane Denève to our studio, the first of what we hope will be many visits in the future.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for pronouncing my name perfectly.
Well, I'm glad we did that. That's every once in a while I get it right, but sometimes I miss badly. Congratulations, by the way, on your coming to St. Louis. I'm sure you're very excited about that.
I am thrilled, and I just can't wait to make music with the orchestra very regularly. I'm afraid this season it's only 1 week, but that's this one.
And that is this one, and something for everybody to look forward to. Is it perhaps, given this new association with the symphony, a little more meaningful to you this time?
Well, it's always meaningful, of course, to make music with such great musicians, but I have to say it's a strange week because we're not yet officially married. Next season, I will be kind of an official fiancé, being the music director designate. Today, this week, I'm only a friend, but I don't want to disappoint knowing all the future we have together. So maybe I'm a little bit more nervous to really continue to please them.
You know, now I know you're a definite Frenchman. When you put something like that in those romantic terms, it's very clear. What has drawn you to St. Louis? You've been here many times before. I think this is your 8th performance with the orchestra, right?
8th visit with the orchestra, yeah. Indeed. And the reason I came back so regularly is because I really enjoy the quality of the music making and the friendliness of the orchestra, the quality of its whole. And I always felt very welcome and really could express myself deeply with these musicians. So it's very organic in a way, the way indeed the romance built between us. It was just a great debut long time ago already, and I kept coming back with always a growing enthusiasm.
You performed with some of the world's great orchestras. What do you see as setting the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra apart from them?
You know, every orchestra has its own DNA and its own soul. And it's very interesting to try to explore that. And definitely this orchestra, who is the second oldest orchestra in this country, has for me a very interesting DNA indeed. You know that there was a French conductor, despite his name, Vladimir Golschmann, who doesn't sound very French. He was a French conductor for very long. I think he was the longest tenure, even if I'm not mistaken. And I can feel that there is a great taste for colors and transparency. At the same time, there is also a huge DNA of American music, especially during the tenure of Leonard Slatkin and now David Robertson. So this is also a specific sound which I found fascinating, that I want to cultivate and maybe add back some French taste to it.
You say a specific sound. Could you elaborate on that? What does that mean?
Well, it's a sound always exists with the whole. And I believe we're celebrating 50 years of Powell Hall, and it's a luxury for an orchestra all over the world to rehearse in the place they perform, because it does create indeed a distinctive sound. And I personally love the richness of the orchestra here. It's also have a very lush string section that allow me to be very lyrical. And I have to say, it's an orchestra that also is very well balanced. I think it's not an orchestra that, for me, plays, sometimes some American orchestra plays very bright or very kind of, harsh or something. And I always felt that here there was a very cultivated, refined sound, which allow, for instance, to play the classical repertoire, I believe, much better than in many places in America, because there is this great possibility to phrase the classical repertoire, and I'm looking forward to explore this repertoire with them.
I've seen you quoted as saying that you appreciate what you call the open-mindedness of the St. Louis Symphony. What does that mean?
Well, the fact is, my way of working is often very visual. I like to make comparison with feelings, with sensations, with sometimes visual comparisons, and I believe, like French author Baudelaire, that said that les parfums, les couleurs et les sons se répondent in his famous poem Correspondences, meaning in English the perfume, the colors and the sound are responding. And I really need always to express myself to be an orchestra that would accept some eccentric sometimes comments in trying to imagine the sensation that the music should offer. And I have to say, I love when the orchestra is really open-minded to receive those comparisons, those ideas, and try to achieve them. And I always felt that here, really a very smiley, open-minded way to go with me exploring these sometimes difficult to express in words sensations.
Every musician, and in this case, a music director and conductor, brings his or her own interpretation, I'm sure, to whatever they're performing. How do you think yours will be different from our current music director, or will it be appreciably different?
I hope so, because there's not one truth in music, and I think what is important is a real interactivity with the musicians and the audiences, that we really explore something different from the masterwork that we play. And I definitely hope that any of the pieces that I may repeat that have been conducted by David Robertson will sound different, and that doesn't say that my version will be better than his. It just means that it will be interesting indeed to explore different facets of the masterworks.
I think for someone who is not a musician in particular, might wonder about that and how you explore different facets. You're working with music, there are certain notes and there's a certain tempo. It's pretty much got to sound the same no matter who's doing it.
Not at all. And the best way for you to figure that out, if I may, is to compare with theater play. Of course,
what?
Theater play. Like let's take a Shakespeare play.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, those are the same words written on the paper, but any actor will already bring his or her own world, accent, style, and then the stage director can totally change the way to phrase it, to put layers of meanings under what is said. And I believe, really, you have to believe that really the amount of freedom is the same for a conductor. You would say, oh, but the rhythm is written in a theater play. It's not written. Well, you could change tempos. You could almost be as free, even rhythmically, as an actor would be, still wanted to be intelligible. And in fact, this is the incredible power of music, is that you can interpret it in such a different way. It's as free, indeed, as being an actor.
Are there certain composers you prefer to work with, in the sense that it gives you a greater freedom of interpretation than others?
It's a very good question, actually. I hope that I would find the same freedom in every composer. I think it just depends of the quality of the piece itself. I'm searching for the pieces that have indeed such a depth that you can explore many layers, and that's what I'm doing, by the way, also with new music. I'm an extremely big fan of music of today, and I say music of today because the word modern music or contemporary music, etc., doesn't mean a lot, because sometimes we say modern music for music that has been written 50 years ago. So, but what I try to search so strongly is to find new music of today that can become repertoire. And the word for me is very important. I will try to propose to St. Louis audiences new music that, for me, I strongly believe could become repertoire. And that means that the musicians want to play and play again, and the music that the audience want to hear and hear again. So I don't think we'll do often on world premiere all the time. I think we'll try to explore the pieces that needs to be repeated for the right reason, because they are really rich as a masterwork and could stand the test of time and become repertoire.
Will we see any of that this Friday morning and Saturday evening?
Yes, actually. Thank you very much. Indeed, I will propose to the audiences a piece from a French composer called Guillaume Connaisson. And this is a composer and a music which is very dear to my heart. And I totally, passionately believe that this man is writing music that will become the repertoire of the future. And so we'll perform a piece called Flammenschrift, which is an homage to Beethoven and German music in general. And I so hope that the audiences will be as enthusiastic or more than I am, because I truly love this music. It's very accessible. It's very tonal, meaning it has a language that includes the usual language of music with harmony and tonality. And I think it's a great piece.
Do you pick the music, the selections for what you're going to play on both of these days?
Yes, indeed, it was. It's always, of course, a back and forth discussion with the orchestra. They always try to see what they need to offer during the season to make it well balanced. But I was very lucky that indeed it's been already a few visits that I could really heavily influence the program, and I'm very excited with this program because it resonates with the city. You know, you are your iconic symbol is the arch, and I think what I will propose is one of the greatest power of music, which is to build bridges between different cultures. And we'll propose a lot of French music, but which has been influenced by a culture which sometimes has been the enemy culture, which is terrible, but German and Austrian culture. And it's great that music indeed make peace with those two cultures and try to see the best of it mixed.
Okay, the performances are 10:30 in the morning on Friday and 8 o'clock in the evening on Saturday. Another question I have, strictly and obviously from the layman's point of view, is the morning performance is at 10:30, as I've just mentioned. In selecting music for a morning performance, do you take into consideration that it's going to be performed in the morning, and would it be different than something you might select for the evening?
Not at all. No, I'm afraid I absolutely don't think in those terms, because I believe good music can wake you up at any time of the day. And indeed, I didn't take that in consideration. I think it's very energizing music, and I hope people will have a great day following that being a full afternoon or only an evening.
You're on the road a lot. You're a busy guy, needless to say. But you come into St. Louis. Have you been in town long this time?
I have just arrived from New York actually yesterday night. So this visit, I have not yet been able to do more than actually walking yesterday night as I arrived in a place that I love. By the way, I stayed at the Chase Park Plaza, and I love the Central West End. I think it's beautiful little restaurants and bars, and very walkable part of the town. So I enjoy it. But I look forward later this week to visit places and visit flats.
The reason I asked the question was, you just don't parachute into a town and then sit down with a 100-member orchestra and start playing. You need to rehearse and to establish that rhythm and tempo and interpretation that you were talking about earlier. How much time do you have to work with the orchestra for this weekend's work?
People sometimes are surprised to know that it's very fast. We have usually 4 rehearsals, 3 of 2.5 hours and 1 of 2 hours. So it's extremely quick indeed. And yet, strangely enough, it is standard and normal and easy, and it still allows you to really heavily influence the interpretation, because music is a very instinctive language, and indeed just as soon as you start, even sometimes despite you give a certain energy, a certain presence to the music without saying any words. It's quite magic. So but it goes very fast. But what I love to do is when I arrive in a town for a week of concert, like I did yesterday night, the first thing I do is to make a little promenade, and because I love to feel the energy of the city. It's fascinating that every city, the air is different. There is something around, and I love to try to capture that a little bit before I start working with the musicians.
I assume you're not going to live here permanently, given your other assignments and tasks.
Eventually, actually, I will certainly move in America and here. What's happening is that my daughter, who is 9 years old, and her name is Alma, is having a great time at her school, which is the International School of Brussels in Belgium. And so for her, and only for her, my wife and I decided to wait a little bit until we make another big move. But in any case, today, with, of course, all the digital life, you can offer a big presence, even virtually, to a place, and I will commit fully to this orchestra. But if I was living here anyway, I would have to travel a lot to the other places. So I'm afraid a conductor's life is definitely a life of a traveler.
What was your first exposure to music?
Well, my father played a tiny bit of tuba as an amateur. So there was, in north of France, where I'm from, if people know the city Lille, a lot of amateur wind instrument orchestras and brass orchestras, and I heard that first. And I was lucky enough that the Orchestre National de Lille, the real symphony orchestra of that region, offered one concert in the little church of my village when I was 8 years old. And so that made me think that we really have to offer music to different places and go out of the concert hall sometimes, because things like my story can happen. You know, when I heard this symphony orchestra and heard strings for the first time in a church when I was 8, I must say that was an incredible emotion. But it's only later, when I was at a school, a Catholic school, that I was hiding, listening to an old nun playing the organ, and I was again fascinated by the beauty of this instrument. She discovered me and gave me some piano lessons. And luckily for me, she noticed I had a little bit of ability with music, and she sent me to the conservatoire, and voila.
Do you ever wonder what your life might have been like had you not been exposed to the music in this very musical village of yours?
Well, yes, actually, when I was 12, 13, I almost stopped music because I was totally passionate by computers. It was the first wave of personal computing, I mean, back in 82, 3, 4. And I programmed some video games, and I was very involved in this world. So actually, I almost stopped music. Luckily, I didn't, to immerse myself in programming, but I didn't. And then my mother wanted me to be a doctor, and so I when I finished school, I had a doubt as well. Do I become an amateur musician, because music was a part of my life and would stay a part of my life, but still go into medical studies or not? And finally, I opted for trying music, and I'm very pleased with that. But I admire, respect, and love doctors and surgeons, and I'm fascinated and sometimes envious about what they do. I try sometimes to save the souls a little bit. That sounds a bit pretentious, but they really save life, so they have the real job.
Music hath charms to soothe the savage breast, so I guess there is something medical almost to that.
Let's hope, just to make my mother happy.
I've often wondered if Mozart and Beethoven had not been exposed to music and to the instruments, what their life might have been like. I can only imagine it would have been very frustrating, because there was something inside them that wasn't being let out.
Well, for a composer of that stature, it's fascinating, because when I meet, for instance, my friend Guillaume Connaisson, he has to be in front of a white page every morning. He lives for that. He's missing it if it's not. It's quite strange. I'm very envious as well. I'm not a composer myself. I only composed a few songs when I was heavily in love. So that's not qualifying for being a composer. If you're a composer, you have the urge to just write every single day of your life, and that's a special gift.
You'll begin as a music director of the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra the 2019-2020 season with a commitment to a certain number of concerts. Is that correct?
Oh yes, I do have a contract with a minimum of 12 subscription weeks of concert plus extra galas, and I will do New Year's concert, for instance. And this is very standard. It's I believe the same numbers of weeks as my predecessors, and I think it's the right number to shape the orchestra in one direction, still allowing the orchestra to enjoy a lot of guest conductors.
And when you're not here, you'll be doing what you're doing now. Will you be with Philadelphia still working with the Brussels organization?
Yes, and some other guest appearances as well, which is very healthy. I think it's very good that you hear different sounds, and you hear. Of course, I'm lucky enough to conduct really top orchestras, so it's very inspiring to see what they do and what they can do better sometimes, and to try to be learning all the time from every experiences.
And before you actually assume the position of music director here, you'll also be conducting back in St. Louis. What is it, 2018, 2019 season? Is that?
Yes, I will be indeed a music director designate, which means that I will. I could not offer more, I'm afraid, than 4 weeks in my schedule, but I'm very pleased with them because they are. 4 visits during the season, and you will see when you learn the repertoire. It's kind of symbolically 4 programs that are dedicated to love and to building the romance until indeed the real wedding. So the meaning of those weeks is quite charming, I hope.
There's that Frenchman coming out, and you once again. The symphony is going to be announcing its next season tomorrow. You want to tell us what that's all about? It's a military secret, I know, until then.
It's crazy. It's really military. I have been really asked to not say anything. I'm already giving you a little tiny information that I should not, telling you that indeed those programs are linked to building the romance, and it's kind of 4 steps of romance, of a love story, which I hope will be what will happen between the St. Louis Symphony and myself. I already love them.
We will be looking forward to all of it, starting with this weekend, Friday morning at 10:30, Saturday evening at 8 o'clock, when Stéphane Denève will be conducting at St. Louis Symphony Orchestra at Powell Hall. Thank you, sir, so much for being with us. Congratulations once again. We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you for having me, and I hope to see you a lot more.
Same here. Thank you. That's Stéphane Denève, St. Louis Symphony Orchestra Music Director Designate. He's here for 2 concerts this week, Friday and Saturday, as we have mentioned. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.